After years of procrastination, I finally got around to reading Orson Scott Card's Speaker for the Dead, and it messed me up. This book did things to my mind and my soul that I was not prepared for in any way, and I wanna talk about it.
Oh, he's technically Mexican and 3/4 American, but for 3 generations he's got that nationality. Great-great-grandpa headed south, whose kids had kids then turned around. It's not what the show's about, but it's why he's Mexican technically.
It helps that he was raised in New Mexico, lived in Guadalajara for 2 years, speaks fluent Spanish with a bachelor's degree in language, and examine taquito.
So this is a review for Speaker for the Dead, but first I have to talk about Ender's Game, the book that came before it. I love Ender's Game. It was one of the first books that I read as a child, which is, it's weird because it's kind of a heavy book for a child to read. It was also pretty long. The first time I read this book was my last year of elementary school. I was still in grade school. And honestly, I cannot tell you how many times I've read Ender's Game, but it's a big number. For a long time, it was my favorite book of all time. Heck, Ender was even my computer password as a child for a long time, because I was just starting computers and they said you need to come up with a password, and so I thought, hey, my favorite book's Ender's Game, so my password's gonna be Ender, which is actually kind of funny because in Speaker for the Dead, Ender is used as a password, and they kind of make fun of how bad a password it is, and that's really not spoiling anything important, but it made me feel bad. Anyway, the point of that story is that I really, really like Ender's Game, the book. And I'm gonna have to spoil parts of that to talk about Speaker for the Dead, but for the most part, I'm not gonna spoil Speaker for the Dead. I'm just gonna tell you how much it messed me up. But honestly, like, if you don't know, like, the plot of Ender's Game, like, I don't know what you've been doing with your life, because it's widely regarded as one of the greatest sci-fis of all time. Speaker for the Dead makes Ender's Game look like a book for babies. Ender's Game is stupid, and I hate it now, because Speaker for the Dead is so much better. Like Jesus said, when I was a child, I did kid stuff, and now I'm not a kid, and so I do adult stuff. That's what Speaker for the Dead is compared to Ender's Game. Ender's Game is garbage. It's still one of the best books ever, but just by comparison, it looks like dog poop. This book did things to me. It really, really spoke to me, and I really, really liked it. Seeing how different these books actually are is actually quite surprising when you know the story behind them getting written. Speaker for the Dead was the book that Orson Scott Card actually wanted to write. But in order for him to write this story and have it make sense, he had to write Ender's Game first. Speaker for the Dead requires a character who's been through a lot of bad stuff. It's important to the story. So Orson Scott Card actually wrote Ender's Game out of spite. The first version was just a short story, but people liked it so much, they made him write a whole book. And oopsie doopsie, it became like one of the most read books of all time. And unfortunately, a lot of people stopped there and didn't go on to read the book that he actually wanted to write, it's Speaker for the Dead. It's really good. So now I'm going to spoil Ender's Game, so warnings beware. The important part of Ender's Game is that it's about a kid who goes to space school to learn to kill aliens because humans encountered some aliens called the Buggers, and he goes through a bunch of training simulations to learn how to fight them because he's a super genius and he's being groomed to become the general of all the humans. And when he finally finishes his space school, the twist of the book, it's a real good freaking twist, is that the simulations weren't actually simulations, they were real. He was commanding real people in real ships who had left Earth years ago. It just took a long time to travel to the Buggers' home planet, and Ender accidentally did a genocide. Whoopsie whoopsie, that's a yikes. So the kid who thought he was just training to become a general was actually commanding the fleets of the humans, and he killed all of the aliens. He wiped them all out, and it's crazy. Naturally, going through something like that would tend to screw somebody up, which is where Speaker for the Dead comes in. Oh boy. Oh, I should also mention at the end of the book, he actually finds like an egg that contains like the last remaining queen for the alien species, which is just like in hibernation. So like he has a chance to redeem himself and find a new world to bring back these aliens that he killed. He killed them all. That was not nice of the humans to lie to that little boy. So that was all of like the backstory that was necessary in order to tell Speaker for the Dead. And wow, Speaker for the Dead really, really pays off. Basically, the gist of it is it's dealing with Ender, who's had to process this depression of, doing a genocide. Whoopsie! Except it's called Xenocide because it's aliens. But after that, he becomes what's called a Speaker for the Dead, which is like a religious position almost of people who like go around and speak people's lives, the thing that they truly lived. And he's the only one that can be the Speaker for the Dead for the aliens that he killed. So he writes a book about that, and it starts like a movement of like people becoming like apostles and Speaker for the Dead, who they go when people die, they go and speak at people's funerals. So he writes that book and he becomes famous, but because he hates himself so much, like he and his sister, they go travel in some spaceships at like just under the speed of light so that they can do some science-y time dilation and basically like skip forward in human history thousands of years while only a couple years pass for them. But that allows them to like have some distance between the genocide and it lets them have their own lives. It lets Ender escape this horrible legacy. This is all actually still just the ending of Ender's Game. I haven't even gotten into Speaker for the Dead. But the point is that Ender is notorious for being the guy that did a genocide, but he also becomes notorious for being the first Speaker for the Dead. The only thing is that no one knows that that's the same person. So Ender has actually become these two great like pantheons of human history, and no one knows that it's actually him. But the point of this book is that it's thousands of years into the future, and humankind has now encountered their second race of intelligent alien life, and naturally they're really scared of it. They find an alien race of pig people, and they're called piggies or pequeninos because the people who find them are Portuguese. So the point of this book is that it's Ender's kind of like redemption story of trying to find a home for the queen egg that he's been carrying around for thousands of years, finding a suitable planet where humans won't be scared of the buggers, while also trying to intervene with humans' first contact with the piggy alien race, and trying to make sure that humankind doesn't make the same mistakes with them that they did with the genocide. I hope I don't get demonetized for saying genocide so many times in this video, but it's what the book's about, baby! Anyway, so that's the basic setup for this book, and it's very, very interesting, but psych, that's not even what the book's even about. That's just the setting, because in reality, this book is actually about humanity and friggin' philosophy. It's a sci-fi that tricks you into learning stuff about yourself and human nature. Because while all that stuff is happening, it's kind of in the background, and it's really just the story of Ender, like, learning the life of this one guy who died so he can be the Speaker for the Dead for that one person on the planet where they're interacting with the other aliens. And it's just it's a very, very human story, and it made me cry because it was beautiful, and it was about family and, like, mistakes and regret and doubt and faith and learning how to look past prejudices to, to love. This book's about love, man. I wasn't expecting this book to make me sad. I thought it was going to be a bunch of space fights like Ender's Game was, and I was wrong. Orson Scott Card catfished me into learning, and I hate him for it. But it was really good. It was one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. I loved it, and it just really made me doubt, like, everything I thought I knew about literature. Like, it was so beautiful, and I can't believe I waited so long to read this book because it's so much better than Ender's Game. It's phenomenal. Like, I'm gonna read you a quick section from this book, and it's not gonna spoil anything it's presented in the book kind of out of context. It's like one of those little blurbs that come before a chapter starts. But it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. Here we go. Here's the quote from the book. Here's the speaker for the dead. It's going to mess you up. A great rabbi stands teaching in the marketplace. It happens that a husband finds proof that morning of his wife's adultery, and a mob carries her to the marketplace to stone her to death. There is a familiar version of this story, but a friend of mine, a speaker for the dead, has told me of 2 other rabbis that faced the same situation. Those are the ones I'm going to tell you. The rabbi walks forward and stands beside the woman. Out of respect for him, the mob forbears and waits with the stones heavy in their hands. Is there any man here, he says to them, who has not desired another man's wife, another woman's husband? They murmur and say, we all know the desire, but Rabbi, none of us acted on it. The rabbi says, then kneel down and give thanks that God has made you strong. He takes the woman by the hand and leads her out of the market. Just before he lets her go, he whispers to her, tell the Lord Magistrate who saved his mistress. Then he'll know I am his loyal servant. So the woman lives because the community is too corrupt to protect itself from disorder. Another rabbi, another city, he goes to her and stops the mob, as in the other story, and says, which of you is without sin? Let him cast the first stone. The people are abashed, and they forget their unity of purpose in the memory of their own individual sins. Someday, they think, I may be like this woman, and I'll hope for forgiveness and another chance. I should treat her as I wish to be treated. As they open their hands, they let their stones fall to the ground. The rabbi picks up one of his fallen stones, lifts it high over the woman's head, and throws it straight down with all his might and crushes her skull, dashing her brain among the cobblestones. Nor am I without sins, he says to the people. But if we allow only perfect people to enforce the law will soon be dead, and our city with it. So the woman died because her community was too rigid to endure her deviance. The famous version of this story is noteworthy because it is so startlingly rare in our experience. Most communities lurch between decay and rigor mortis, and when they veer too far, they die. Only one rabbi dared to expect of us such a perfect balance that we could preserve the law and still forgive the deviation. So, of course, we killed him. That is more poetic than anything I ever read for school. It's beautiful. Anyway, everyone should read this book. It will make you a better person. And, it should be required reading in schools. You could learn more from this book as a kid than you could from reading The Great Gatsby or something like that. This book's incredible, and more people need to know that it is. And obviously, if you haven't read Ender's Game, you should read that first. But, honestly, who hasn't read Ender's Game? And, what have you, if I've made mistakes not reading this one, what have you been doing with your life? So go read Ender's Game, and then go read Speaker for the Dead. And I'm going to go read the next one, which is called Xenocide, which sounds really pleasant. And I can't wait to have my soul shattered again. It can't be a happy book with a name like Xenocide. Anyway, so I got that to look forward to, so pray for me. Anyway, that's it. Bye now. Bye.